Hi, this is Johnny Gray from rulesofsquash.com. My qualifications are 70 years experience. I played to UK Super League standard in the late 70s and early 80s. I held SRA, now Squash England, coaching and refereeing certificates, and I have a degree in sports mechanics. Note, it would have been nice if the person who put up these despicable, contemptible videos had had the decency to honor to put his name to this gutter snipe work. His failure to do so removes any credibility they might have had. I'm going to analyze the movements shown in these videos on this three core basis. 1. For every strike, a violent arm swing, there will be an automatic counterbalancing movement in the legs. This is usually uncontrollable and therefore a genuine movement. 2. There will be then a second movement where players make good their balance, generally known as recovery. 3. There will be a third movement where the player will begin to clear as quickly and as much as possible. Note, 2 and 3 above may occasionally combine into one movement, if and only if they have played from a very stable base and they do not require much of a counterbalancing adjusting step. So we see a strike immediately followed by a clearing movement. Passing and failing the cheating test for strikers. There are two parts. A. Strikers pass the counterbalancing recovery part of the test if they can be seen that the movement is one that one would expect. B. Strikers pass the clearing test if their third movement is away from where they have hit the ball. Passing and failing the cheating test for non-strikers. 1. If they have played a bad shot and put themselves under pressure, and therefore, as a result, now either move to crowd the striker, move too early, not allow the striker to finish their shot, or take the wrong line and move the wrong way, or move too close to the clearing striker. Therefore, the cheating test requires looking at both players, something that Mr. Nobody completely failed to do, showing either his ignorance and or his bias. Finally, cheating has to be the result of a deliberate action. Therefore, for cheating to be established, it has to be shown that any analyzed movement by the striker is not as expected based upon the three core analysis system. If it cannot be shown to be deliberate, it cannot be classed as cheating. It may still be worthy of a stroke or a let, but not of any conduct sanction. Okay, on that basis, here we go. Immediately, we have a movement by Makin, who strikes and moves into Asal, but nobody comments on that. Asal would have been within his rights to withhold his shot and claim that he had been obstructed. Also, Makin has failed to clear as he has moved towards the direction of the ball that he has just hit, resulting in his collision with Asal and not the other way around. Next, Makin has played a terrible shot and is now in a serious positional disadvantage. Having failed to clear, tries to capitalize on that by moving into Asal's personal space before Asal has had a chance to finish his shot. There is no doubt that if Asal had made that movement into Makin the other way around, the likers of this video would have been screaming foul. I ask viewers now to consider the following argument. For anything to be deliberate, it has to be pre-planned. I hope that you agree with that. Now, there are many situations in squash which are repeated over and over again where such pre-planning might be possible to take place. But this is not one of them. As not only has it occurred unexpectedly, it is also probably a one-off situation that neither player has ever experienced prior or since, and therefore not one where a player can be pre-planning anything. If pre-planning was impossible, then this cannot be deliberate. My analysis is that Asal's eyes stay on the ball and where it is going at all times, following it down the wall. And if you watch the slow-mo, you can see that the originally high racket starts to lower as his right shoulder, recovers to an upright position, bringing the racket downwards. But the final movement is actually a small upward movement, and that Asal was simply not expecting Makin's head to be that high. In many ways, Makin should have ducked lower, considering the circumstances. My analysis is that this was a complete accident, and if you put it into context with this incident, it is so minor as not to be worthy of any comment whatsoever, as it appears that this incident was not worthy of any comment either, quite extraordinarily. Now for the famous Hisham hand grab. Look very carefully at the slow-mo, and you can clearly see that Hisham is pushing Asal in the back as Asal clears in front of him, away from the side wall where he has just put the ball. When you push someone in the back, the automatic counterbalancing movement is for the arm to move backwards, and there is no controlling that. Next, you can clearly see that Hisham is beginning to move his racket behind Asal's back in order to get ready for his backhand, but in doing so is beginning to thread the racket underneath Asal's counterbalancing arm, and the combination of Asal moving forward and Hisham's racket moving upwards and making contact with Asal's forearm and then sliding up to make contact with his semi-clenched hand makes it look very bad. However, this analysis shows that it was a complete accident and that neither player were at fault, except maybe for a push in the back by Hisham. For this to have been considered to be one of Asal's worst offences tells you just how bad the bias is against him everywhere. Frankly, it's quite disgraceful. At full speed, this one does look bad because it looks like he hits Elias on the head. But in fact, when you slow it down, you can see that he does not make contact with Elias at all, and you can see several other factors. Firstly, you can see quite clearly that Asal has got a clear and open strike that is going hard down the backhand wall to the back corner. His actual strike is perfect in that he effects a powerful strike that results in a natural counterbalancing forward steps and a swing that rises high above anybody's head and never breaks the vertical plane, therefore never going into any dangerous area in the tee. By contrast, you can see Elias sauntering across, physically preparing himself for the upcoming contact, fully committed to going in front of Asal, despite knowing full well that the ball is going to finish in the back corner. The fact that he is preparing himself for contact is proof that he has decided to risk himself. and go through the shot that he knows is coming. The correct line is clearly behind Asal. As a coach, the rear service line is absolutely critical for whether a player moves backwards or forwards from there. If you are able to move forwards when playing the ball on the rear service line, then you are entitled to continue moving forwards. And the opponent should recognize this and prepare to take the line behind. The really amazing factor of this particular strike by Asal is the incredible safety of it, assuming that his opponent allows him to finish it, which he didn't. There is full power with a high, safe racket follow through that never breaks the vertical plane and goes past his right shoulder and into the tee area. It just does not do that. I can guarantee you that there are many players that would have knocked Elias right off his feet from that situation. Frankly, Elias was reckless, and it would seem that the referee on that occasion felt the same. Frankly, this one is quite ridiculous. Asal stretches forward to play the ball in front of himself, slightly off balance, and as a result, his right leg does a counterbalancing movement, but which doesn't really do anything at all. And he prepares to stand back up on it as part of his recovery. However, his opponent is so close to him that he is actually straddling that rear leg, and as a result naturally falls over it. If you are going to stand directly behind an opponent as he plays his shot, you are unlikely to be able to go either side of him without a collision. This one is not great. You can see that he is keeping the racket safe and high, but with his physical movement back towards the middle of the court, he has brought the arm at head height into the tee area, full stop. However, I am a little surprised that Cole is standing upright, full stop. This is a standard situation where players generally duck down to go under armpits. So I would blame both players here in that Asal has brought the arm into the tee area at head height, but there is accepted protocol that players do duck underarms, and Cole seems to be stood upright, and he must be 6 foot or so. This one, I give you, is a little odd. However, this is a classic case of, albeit excessive, counterbalancing movement by Asal over which he had no control. I do beg of you to try this movement in your lounge. Stand on one leg, leaning slightly forwards, and then violently throw your arm forwards, and you will see your rear leg do exactly that. That therefore makes it an involuntary movement and therefore not a voluntary one and not a deliberate one. However, we need to discuss as to why the ref gave a no let. The first, most likely, is that from her position, she could not see it as Ali was blocking her view. Her overall feeling will probably have been that Ali went the wrong way initially and so simply didn't see it. Personally, I think it's worth at least a let for several reasons. One, I believe there was interference with Ali's racket, and more importantly, he did not have a clear vision of the ball coming off the front wall. As a coach, one tells one's students that they must move their opponent off the tee so that they can then claim it. If their opponent can play the ball with one leg on the tee, then they have failed to move them off the tee, and they themselves have no right to that tee. This is a situation that Asal exploits to the max, being one, tall, and two, powerful. Powerful enough to play the ball off a huge lunge, leaving his recovery leg on the tee, which he is perfectly entitled to do, and then stand back up on that rear leg, so keeping control of the tee. Other players would do the same if they were as big and as powerful as he is, but they are not. So they need to truly move him off the tee. People often say that he sticks out his rear leg. He absolutely does not do that. What he does do is to stick out his front leg into a long lunge, leaving his rear leg where it is, which he is entitled to do. So his shot is a lunge, a strike, a follow through, and a recovery, all perfectly correct. You will see that in the clip Mr. Nobody has made for us, that Ali has done exactly the same thing with his rear leg. The only difference being that Asal is not trying to go round the front. If he had, he would have tripped over it. In the Cole clip, there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. And check out Cole's rear leg, for goodness sake. Where Ali tripped over Asal, there were 2 points. Firstly, Asal plays a boast, but he plays it late with deception, and as a result, there is a counterbalance twitch of the rear leg, which is admittedly rises above the ground fractionally. However, Ali is going completely the wrong way, having not read the boast at all. And had he read it, the ball is on the right-hand side of the court, clear and wide and open, for him to wander across and smack it down the forehand wall. I reiterate that this was a natural counterbalancing movement that he could not control, and was therefore not deliberate. Never mind that Ali went the wrong way, and should not have had a let. There is very little wrong with most of this general movement, and all players play exactly like this: lunge out, strike, then stand back up again. And just occasionally they all fall over each other. When Cole falls over Asal's leg on the forehand side, if you look at Asal's rear central leg, there is no movement whatsoever other than stretch and stand back up. So a poor shot by Cole, allowing Asal a volley with a foot on the tee, and I've no idea what Cole is trying to do, go in front or behind, but quite obviously he should have gone behind. I accept that this is contact, though I do believe it to be accidental as a result of a lazy walk forward and a let should have been given. 2 points on this one. Point 1. Ali is in no man's land, having given Asal a really easy shot, and so Ali is at a serious positional disadvantage. Point 2 is that this is movement with strike, which is completely different to movement after strike, full stop. If it's your turn to hit the ball, then you may move to the ball as you wish and hit through the ball as you wish. And then everybody has to look at the results of it all after that has all settled down. But up to that point, it has been the striker's turn, and the non-striker has to await his. This movement is actually coached and is perfectly legal. In this case, as usual with such movement, it actually comprises, as I mentioned in my introduction, of a strike and a clear at the same time, with Asal hitting the ball away from himself to the sidewall as he moves across to the tee to give a clear path to his opponent on his left. His opponent needed to read where the ball was going and position himself in order that he could move to it after the strike. Again, Asal's opponents have given him shots where he's fully on the tee and they are stranded behind him. And on each occasion, Asal makes it quite clear that he is hitting the ball to the backhand wall and clearing to the middle. And players behind him need to go to his left, to where he has cleared and left the ball. I have absolutely no idea what we are looking at here, except that the majority of the time Asal is playing the ball forwards with some forward velocity, which results in small forward movements that are natural to the strike. And in the no-let example, he is clearly trying to get out of the way, but failing. But that's not a problem. And in this one here, the right leg is an absolutely natural movement that goes with that forward throw of the racket on the backhand volley. And this one, yet another dreadful shot by Ali, straight onto Asal's racket. And if you look at his front foot, he has hit the ball, landed on his front foot, not moved it 1 millimeter because he hasn't got time to move it before Ali comes crashing through. The ball has long gone and Ali is completely beaten. And that foot had nothing to do with anything. Good God, this comparison demonstrates the ignorance of Mr. Nobody. He is comparing a backhand volley with Asal on the tee and on the half-court line, so that Asal has his front shoulder probably in the front half of the court, and the ball put on his racket is an atrocious one that all he can do is to lean forward and volley it, and has an accompanying
forward movement, and his opponent should go behind him. And Mr. Nobody is comparing this with a forehand volley where the shoulder of the player, who is a good yard further back than the Asal video, and his shoulder is probably behind the service box area. And yes, of course, from that position, he can move backwards and sideways because the shoulder is behind him. What a ridiculous comparison.
Not sure why this is being shown. It's another example of a poor shot by Ali, allowing Asal to volley from the tee, and then Asal shows perfect clearance, and Ali is obviously completely beaten by the shot. If it is somehow an example of, open quotes, cheating, close quotes, by Asal, it's clearly delusional. This play relates to a general problem at PSA level, where players insist on going round the front at all times. Technically, if the player going around the front cannot cut the ball off at the wall and then has to turn and go down the wall, then they have taken an indirect line, and the line should have been behind. Notice that in all these clips, Asal does not do this once. A player cannot adjust for an opponent that moves to cut off the ball, finds he cannot, and then starts coming back into him. Please check the diagram that demonstrates this. All of Asal's shots are played with a forward strike, and therefore a forward counterbalance movement into recovery, and his opponent is then on him before he can initiate his clearance. Finally, as Asal is in front of the rear cervix box line at all times, he has the right to move forwards. That is not a crime. However, if obstruction does result, the ref will have to decide on the quality of the shot, and specifically if the opponent could have cut it off at the wall. If he could have, it's a let, unless he could volley it, and then it's a stroke. If he could not, then it's a no let, because the ball has gone and the line was behind. In this area of movement, this is a traffic issue and not a conduct issue. In this set of repeated actions, first look at the quality of the shot, with Cole completely unable to cut that off at the wall as he wished to do. So now he has to turn and go down the wall, and then in doing so moves into Asal. He is clearly beaten by the ball and has taken the wrong line, with the straight line being behind Asal. In terms of Asal's actual movement, he is in front of the rear service box line, and so is entitled to hold his ground. Next, he has played a forward moving shot with his weight on an outstretched left leg, and because it was a forward moving shot, in order to regain balance, that left leg will naturally move slightly forwards to compensate as he brings it back under his body. To accuse Asal of anything untowards here is absolutely ridiculous. Here we have a classic Asal moaning session. Cole is all over the place, being thoroughly run around, and as a result is clambering all around Asal's personal space. First, we have a dreadful shot by Cole into the middle of the court that Asal has to adjust for quite correctly by moving his body into the middle of the court to be able to play it at all,
and drawn there entirely by Cole's bad shot. Next, his follow-through is 100% perfect, as it never breaks the vertical plane, and he lifts it high and above Cole's head. Cole, in desperation, moves before Asal has been allowed to finish his reasonable follow-through, but along the general protocol of ducking under armpits, and manages to play another dreadful shot, clearing right across Asal, which could have been a stroke there and then. And then fails to read a cross-court drive and trips over Asal's rear leg because he was going in the wrong direction in the first place. However, I do need to address the lift of that rear leg, which we saw earlier on in this video. It may be something that Asal does need to work on. It is a natural counterbalancing movement to that strike, but it does cause problems, and as such, he needs to work on that not happening. Again, emphasize, it is not deliberate. It is a natural counterbalancing movement. But, as I said, he needs to find a way for that not to happen in the future. I find it very hard to fault Asal's follow-throughs for two good reasons. One, he never breaks the horizontal plane between him and his opponent, and he always lifts it high, enabling players to duck under. This is standard protocol. I would venture to say that, as I have said so often, that his opponents are moving too quickly before he has had time to finish his reasonable follow-through as per the regulations, and effectively are crowding him. Congratulations, Mr. Nobody. You managed to find one example of Asal pushing off an opponent. I have here a clip of Elias doing it twice in 3 shots, with the second one pushing Asal so far away that he could not get to the drop that Elias finally played.